search for an identity which had been going on for close to a month.
I'm dealing with a horrific murder here. I need the public's help to help me identify who the victim is.
But it wasn't just the identity of the victim that the police were trying to establish. At a forensic science lab in Cambridgeshire, Ray Palmer was hoping to uncover more information about the murder itself and the culprits.
The first task that we had in this investigation was to look at the debris which had been taken and recovered from all the deposition sites, from all the packages that had been used to wrap up the body parts, and to look at the debris to see if there was any associations which we could demonstrate between them that were common to them and may give some indication as to the last environment in which the deceased had been.
Ray and the investigation team agreed a strategy that would involve analysing the tape that had been used to bind the sacking around the various body parts.
The examination of the tapes consisted of us looking at these for what we call fibre collectives. Now, collectives are actually populations of fibres which could have a common origin and appear to have come from the same source. So our first task was really to look at the adhesive side of the tapes to see if there were any fibre collectives present which might give us some clue as to the environment in which the body parts had been wrapped.
The fibre evidence would only prove useful once the police had discovered who the victim was and where he was murdered. But as the forensics experts worked to find any evidence that would lead police to the victim, the police started to get a response to their media appeals. And it was one particular phone call that would be a key breakthrough.
A member of Jeff's family, as a result of the media coverage, made direct contact with the incident room. From the circumstances in which he'd gone missing, that raised Jeffrey as a potential person that could have been the victim. I then sent officers round to Jeff's home address.
When they arrived, there was no sign of Jeffrey Howe. But there were two people living at the property: Jeffrey's tenants, Stephen Marshall, and his 20-year-old girlfriend, Sarah Bush. Jeffrey and Stephen had worked together at one point as partners in a kitchen fitting business. In November 2008, Stephen and Sarah had fallen on hard times, so Jeffrey let them stay in his spare room. They'd agreed to pay rent, but shortly afterwards they'd stopped making the payments and Jeffrey had asked them to leave. They refused to go.
Officers of DS Ian Siggery plus others attended the address in Southgate. They spoke with Sarah Bush and Stephen Marshall, who were both there, and basically weren't happy with the account they'd given in relation to why Mr. Howe wasn't at the location.
The reaction that Marshall and Bush gave when officers went round there was such that they were nervous, were being a little evasive. It caused concerns for the officers, who then phoned up to say, well, OK, look, we're not happy with what we're being told. What do you want us to do? Sounds like a strange question, but a question where we don't know who the victim is at that stage.
They made a cursory search of the address, and secreted in one of the wardrobes was a number plate with the registration H8WEJ, which basically reads Howe J, which belonged to Jeffrey. And at that point, they obviously had quite huge concerns. They made the decision to leave the address, regroup, and then the arrest was made quite soon after that.
Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush were taken to Hatfield Police Station for questioning. While they were in custody, forensics experts began to search for any evidence of murder in Jeffrey Howe's flat. But time was against them. If the police couldn't obtain significant evidence, the pair would have to be released after 24 hours.
They're arrested for a murder that's happened, but we don't actually know that that murder has happened. But that then starts the clock in terms of how long we can keep people in custody. We needed to work at 100 miles an hour, literally, to get the evidence, because we hadn't gathered any evidence against them as individuals prior to their arrests. Initial looking at the flat didn't reveal that that was necessarily the murder scene, because quite clearly a really thorough clean-up operation had taken place. It was only when we managed to start moving furniture around, pulling carpets up, that the forensic examination revealed that there was a quantity of blood in both the bedroom and the bathroom. So we believe that he was stabbed in the bedroom and then the dismemberment took place in the bathroom.
As officers worked around the clock at the crime scene, Detective Constable Sue Burns was preparing to interview Stephen Marshall.
When I first met Marshall, he came across as a charming, nice person, if I'm honest, and he actually kept that up throughout the time in police custody.
Do you now confirm that's Geoffrey Howe?
No comment.
Do you recognise that person to be Geoffrey Howe?
No comment.
When he was being interviewed, he took up his right to make no comment during the interviews, which is obviously legally allowed to do.
Are you surprised to learn that Geoffrey Howe's been murdered?
No comment.
How did you feel when you found that he'd been murdered?
No comment.
You think you're going to be dealing with someone that's kind of monster-like, and when you then get a man in front of you who isn't a monster, it's quite difficult to attribute what he's done or what's happened to this particular person.
I believe he was a friend or an associate of yours.
No comment.
And my understanding is he's been quite kind to you in the past by allowing you to stay at his home address.
No comment.
Are you surprised that
As the no comments continued, you sit and think, well, if you haven't done this to your friend, who has? And if you haven't done this to your friend, why aren't you telling me you haven't done it? And as the interviews progressed, his guilt became more and more apparent.
And do you feel upset by the fact that not only has he been murdered, but someone's chosen to dismember him and place parts of his body around the countryside?
No comment.
How does that make you feel?
No comment.
You got no comment to make about that in any shape or form?
No comment.
Okay. Bearing in mind, obviously, people will be listening to this tape, and he's a friend of yours, and most people, I would say, would be quite shocked by the fact that someone's been killed and dismembered.
No comment.
Throughout the whole of the interview, there was no remorse shown by Stephen Marshall. However, once the tape's finished, he was very courteous and very polite, and and just seemed to just genuinely just normal person.